Good evening and welcome to the Corte Madera Planning Commission meeting for June 14th, 2022. Would you please call the roll, Mr.
Good evening. Commissioner Bandel,
Here.
Commissioner Rizzo,
Here.
Commissioner Chase,
Here?
Commissioner Bundy, Commissioner Metcalf.
Okay, join me in a salute to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of
the
the United States of America.
Republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get to public comment, I wanted to let the staff read a notice about Commissioner Metcalf. And I'll follow with some comments, but then the public can comment as well.
Thank you, Chairman Chase. It is with great sadness, deep sympathy that the town announces the unexpected passing of Planning Commissioner, good governance advocate, and longtime Corte Madera resident Phyllis Metcalf. Phyllis had been an active member of the Corte Madera Planning Commission since her appointment in 2012. She was extremely thoughtful, thorough, and decisive when rendering planning decisions. Certainly not shy in communicating her feelings regarding the importance of fair government processes and passion for good architecture and design and improving Corte Madera for current and future residents. She also made many contributions to other areas of town government, most recently successfully advocating for capping campaign contributions for town elected officials. Staff will remember Phyllis as a very supportive, caring, and genuine woman who was always happy to talk through the issues and selflessly served our community to make it a better place to live, work, and visit. Phyllis had a passion for public service, which is evident by her 40+ years of service to many organizations. Aside from her dedication and commitment to the town of Corte Madera's Planning Commission, Phyllis was elected to 6 4-year terms, 3 terms as president to the Marin Community College District. Phyllis was also elected to 3 2-year terms as a representative from the 2nd supervisory district, the Democratic Central Committee Marin, and served 3 2-year terms as an appointee from the 9th District Assemblyman to the California Democratic State Central Committee. Phyllis's commitment to the community extended beyond her elected positions. Phyllis also volunteered for a number of community organizations, including Marin Coalition, Marin Forum, Wednesday Morning Dialogue, National Women's Political Caucus, Marin Center for Independent Living, Exodus Residential Treatment for Autism, Marin County Chamber of Commerce, American Red Cross, United Way of the Bay Area, Marin IJ Adopt a Family Campaign, University of Northern California and Golden Gate Theological Seminary. She considered herself to be a proud activist and advocated throughout her life for civil rights and civil treatment for all. The town of Corte Madera, our staff and community all benefited immensely from Phyllis's selfless dedication to public service. The town of Corte Madera is eternally grateful for Phyllis's contributions to our community. Phyllis and her family will forever be in our thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a sad day that Phyllis has left us. Phyllis was an extraordinary woman.
Absolutely.
And she is and will be infinitely missed by many people. In the years that we served together on the commission, besides conferring on countless issues with her, I had the privilege and rare time to work one-on-one with her, and specifically on the rules reformation for the commission. In that process, it clarified for me that above all else, she was about ethics and about doing the right thing. that permeated all of her professional life as a sage for many in the town. She could and would go toe-to-toe with anyone who would express a contrary opinion or challenged her or the town on any sort of issues. Her favorite quote was, "You're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own set of facts." But Phyllis was an amazing writer, as many can attest. She understood language so well, she could craft anything needed by the town, a political candidate, or just to express very certain opinion of architecture and design. In doing so, she was a storyteller, and she loved to relate her own historical moments with a relish to make a point. She spoke often about her children as a reference point, and we spoke to her son, and I didn't realize that she was quite a mother in her time. She didn't regale that fact very often, but she was. There isn't anyone to replace her joie de vivre, stories about cats, an amazing dedication to communication. I will sorely miss her presence, as will many in the town and beyond. Thank you. Please, yes. I have to hold it down. Press it.
Yeah, I got it. Phyllis was my very good friend. I wanted to share with you the top 10 things I learned from Phyllis in the years that I was friends with her, and they're not in any particular order. She taught me to speak out for injustice. She always said, surround yourself with good design. Get as much education as you can and make it a lifelong pursuit. Respect teachers. They are entrusted with our future. Love animals. Sometimes they are better than people. Always try to find a middle ground. Follow through on promises and commitments. Don't spend time on a committee rather than time on action. Don't embarrass anybody publicly. Speak to them on a one-on-one basis. And then the final thing is, if you have a choice, choose a drink with bubbles. That was my Phyllis, my friend Phyllis.
Yeah, and she was a good friend. Always knew that if I saw her number come up on my phone, that it was going to be something of great value and certainty from Phyllis. She imparted much wisdom. So, Mr. Rizzo, do you have anything you want to add?
You guys, I'm teary-eyed right now. I just, I just didn't have enough time with her. I was really learning a lot and enjoying, being part of the team. And I especially, I just, COVID was just over. We had our first meeting at a site and just had started having an opportunity to develop a relationship. But I know that she was a very special person. And very ingrained in our community, and I'm very sad that she's no longer with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If Dr. Bundy were here, I know he would impart some words, but he's not. He's on his way back from Tennessee, and we'll see him at the next meeting. So, with that said, we've started to cover it, and we'll open the meeting to public comment for that which is not on tonight's agenda. So if you have a comment you'd like to make, you can email it in to public comment at tcmmail.org. You can raise your hand on the screen, or you can make a comment. So you have 3 minutes for something that is not on tonight's agenda. So, do we see anybody?
No emails, Chair Chase, although there were 2 earlier today that Phil would have forwarded to you, or if you haven't had a chance there on the entry table there for an item that is not on tonight's agenda. I don't see any hands raised from our attendees either.
Okay. So with that said, then we'll close the public comment section of tonight's open agenda. So with that said, we have one item, business item. And this is titled, Receive, Update, and Provide Comment and/or Recommendations to Staff Regarding Potential Modifications to the Housing Opportunities Sites for the Housing Element. And Director Wolf and Planner Martha Battaglia are going to present this.
Thank you, Chair Chase. You can put up the presentation, that would be appreciated. Thanks, Tracy. So tonight, we're going to be discussing essentially what we're describing as a report and have comments and discussion from the Planning Commission regarding potential modifications to the housing opportunity site associated with our housing element update. And really the purpose of this meeting this evening, and also we will be following up and taking whatever we hear this evening to the town council next week on Tuesday, June 21st, is really just to continue the principle of transparency in the process and disclosing of public information with respect to the housing element update and the importance of things such as the housing element sites and what we call the housing opportunity sites that we've discussed at length during previous workshops associated with the housing element. And then most recently on February 15th, where we had a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the Town Council, where we sort of solidified the staff draft proposal to the town's RHNA, or the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So that's what we're trying to do. It's a discussion item. There's no decisions going to be made this evening, but we would love to, again, disclose this information publicly and then hear from the commission if you have any comments or recommendations with respect to these, or questions and recommendations with respect to what we're presenting tonight. So essentially, and next slide. Oh, wait, I can try to do this. Sorry. This is the map of the 9 sites that was presented to the Planning Commission and the Town Council after walking our community through a series of public workshops on why we need to do this and what we're trying to accomplish in identifying housing opportunity sites. We identified 9 sites to satisfy the assigned regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA. And based on the feedback we received from the Town Council and Planning Commission, we moved forward with the preparation of the necessary draft environmental analysis documents and the draft housing element chapters. Part of that process involved releasing a notice of preparation on March 16th of 2022, which started a 30-day public comment period on essentially the scope of work for the draft supplemental environmental impact report. In response to that notice, we received on April 15th, 2022, a comment letter, which is in your packet as attachment 1 from Graham Street Realty LLC, owners of commercial office properties at 240 Tamil Vista Boulevard and 100 Tamil Plaza, which is right down the street. That's shown on this map. It's sort of the rest of the 9 sites that we've already talked about are faded into the background, and then the 2 additional sites are the tiles in the upper left corner of this slide. So you can see they're in close proximity to several other housing opportunity sites in the northern portion of the town, near the intersection of Pfeiffer and Lucky and Tamil Vista Boulevard. And similar to some of the other housing opportunity sites in this area, they have similar characteristics, 1 acre to 2 in size. They are currently occupied with commercial uses, in this case, commercial office uses, and meet many of the same criteria that we ran other sites through in terms of being as in close proximity to the best available public transit, away from the existing residential and established residential neighborhoods, and so on. And there, we can go through that again if you'd like. But in addition to this very important public comment we received, you're also aware, and you've received comments with respect to site 1 of the, I'm sorry, and I'll just these are the 100 Tamil Plaza, just to give a little bit more detail on this site. It actually borders 2 other opportunity sites that are in Tamil Plaza. And so you can see this acreage, about 1.5 acres. It's also currently zoned mixed use commercial. And currently the existing development is about 23,000 square feet of office. The other site is actually where we are currently located, 240 Tamil Vista Boulevard. Again, you can see the parcel size and the general land use designation and the current office square footage. But as I mentioned, in addition to comments related to adding those sites, and that was what the comment letter requested that we do, add those sites to our site inventory or housing opportunity site list. As you're well aware, we've received many comment letters, emails, and public comment at meetings of both the Planning Commission and Town Council regarding site 1. And with respect to this site, some of the neighbors, as you can see, it's just bordered by a single family neighborhood just to the south of site 1, which is outlined in yellow on this slide, and it encompasses both the vacant former mortuary and the triangle shaped parcel, which is used for parking, as surface parking at this time. But it's bordered by single family homes on Meadow Sweet, and also across from single family homes on Tamalpais Drive. And neighbors have expressed some concerns that this is really not an appropriate housing opportunity site, given it is small in size, split by a street, and really the potential to exacerbate some existing concerns and issues that the residents feel are occurring there with respect to traffic, circulation, and parking issues, and narrowness of the street and other physical factors that sort of do not lend itself to additional residential density than is currently allowed today. So those, in response really to those comments, we wanted to bring those forward this evening and really have a discussion about what staff intends to do with these sites at this particular time. With respect to that, I think we wanted to make it, I think there's a conversation here about timing and the next steps in the housing element process that's really critical in order to support really what staff's recommending, and that is to both add the 2 additional housing opportunity sites, 100 Tamil Plaza and 240 Tamil Vista, to the housing opportunity sites list. And also at this point in time, retain site 1 as well. And just to speak a little bit more clearly about that, I think the timeline for the remaining work related to the housing element is important in this regard. I don't think my laser won't show up on this slide, but you can see we're continuing to do outreach at this point in time with pop-up events and really giving more opportunity for people to become aware of the process and provide public comment. We do anticipate releasing the draft housing element in early July. And that is that's a critical deadline really to hit. We were required to have a 30-day comment period after we release the draft housing element. And then we incorporate those comments into the draft housing element. So from that point, it takes us really to mid-August. And the next step in the process is really to send that draft housing element to the State Department of Housing and Community Development for a 90-day review. And this is all stipulated in state law, these timelines. The review by HCD, the State Department of Housing and Community Development, will evaluate and will the sites that we've chosen and the strategy really we've developed to obtain or enough sites to meet our RENA requirement. And part of that evaluation, I think we're in a little bit, maybe not so much unique, but maybe somewhat unique in that, as you know, we don't have a lot of vacant land. So really we are making the case that all of these sites that we've chosen to meet the RENA will be redeveloped and are able to be redeveloped and with housing over the next 8 years or until 2031. And in order to actually make that case, we have to provide certain amount of evidence and support. Obviously, certain sites lend themselves very well to this. We have a vacant theater at site number, I believe that's site number 2, 41 Tamil Vista Boulevard. So certainly something's going to happen there. Similarly, site 1 is vacant right now with the mortuary. So there's you would expect in the next 8 years for some sort of development to happen at those sites. Other sites, we're relying on more of the existing vacancy rates at certain of the existing occupied uses, the intention of the owners of the properties in terms of what they intend to do with their properties over the next decade or so, and what they have been telling us, and really the likelihood that these sites can be turned into housing over the next 8 years. But what's critical is we need to find out, and we will find out from HCD, we're likely to get comments on some of these sites at this, and we just don't know what those are at this point in time. So strategically, really, it's staff's feeling that the more sites we have in the draft housing element and in the draft housing element that we send to HCD, the more flexibility it really provides the town. Ultimately, when we bring the housing element back for consideration of adoption and for consideration of rezoning proposals, it gives the town more flexibility to respond to HCD comments in a thoughtful way, and also to really focus in on where the likely housing development will occur and should occur. And so that's really staff's recommendation, is to include more sites at this point in the process, understanding that there are concerns about site 1. We certainly think that the sites that were brought forward by Graham Street Realty fit the criteria that we've laid out for other housing opportunity sites that we've evaluated through the community workshop process. So I've gone through the staff recommendation. So this is really just the map showing the 11 sites with the addition of 100 Tamil Plaza and the addition of 240 Tamil Vista Boulevard in the northern portion of town. And what that means is that if we add these two sites, sites 10 and 11 on this table to the 9 sites that we had previously, our draft will show that the potential capacity of housing units to be developed over the next up to 2031 would be 872 units. And again, we recognize this is more than what is technically needed by the RENA process. But again, some of these sites, we don't have the same level of information, for example, that we have from site 10 and 11, where the owner has sort of given their intentions and made them known. So we do, as staff, have some concerns about some other sites where we just aren't communicating with the ownership of these properties, even though we think they're good sites to consider redevelopment. But we just don't know how that's going to play out at this time. So we really think, while it looks like a large number, again, it's the flexibility built into this that is helpful at this time and at this point in the process. With respect to 601 Tamalpais, however, we have been speaking to at least 2 of the homeowners on Meadow Suite, and have had a couple meetings, and they've been sort of coordinating some of the neighborhood concerns regarding that site. And so we did want to at least start the process of acknowledging what we're hearing from the neighbors and some of their concerns, and also recognizing that this is really the smallest site that we have included in our housing opportunity site list. You know, that we started down the road of actually thinking about options for consideration, really once HCD has a chance to review the housing opportunity site list. Our draft housing element comes back with comments. There are several options, and we've shared these with the neighbors that we've met with at on Meadow Suite, and just wanted to get that conversation out there, that there are options with respect to 601 Tamalpais. They range from essentially doing what we've proposed to do to this point, and keeping the site in, rezoning it to 20 dwelling units an acre. The 10 units would count toward RENA requirements. I will say to some of the neighbors' concerns that it's a small size lot. There would be some additional work that even staff would need to do and the town would need to do in order to make those qualify as lower income units in our RENA. And so we may not get there with the lower income argument in any case, but 10 units would be counted if we did go forward and rezone it. The site 2 is sort of rezone it, but not increase the density, just make it consistent with the general plan, include some development standards. There aren't a lot of development standards on that site today. And so add things like realistic setbacks. There could be other development standards related to site planning, landscaping, even potentially ways to deal with the 2 different portions of the site, with the surface parking lot and more of the main portion of the site to the east. So there's certain things we could do with respect to that, but just not increase the density. And then 3, remove it from the housing opportunity site list entirely. I think what's important to note with this site, and we had this communication and discussion with some of the neighbors, is that today that site already allows 15.1 dwelling units an acre in terms of residential development capacity. It also allows for commercial development there, 0.34 acres. So that's a baseline. And so really we're looking at a difference between about 7 units could be developed based on the size of the lots today. And with the rezoning, we're talking about approximately 10 units. It's not substantial. It's also acknowledging it's not out of the 872 that we have on that table. It's a very small number with respect to that as well. So, you know, I think we just wanted to start the conversation. We still are recommending leaving it in for now, but there are options with respect to this that I think we would support as staff, but we would look to direction from Planning Commission and the Town Council more later in the process, around December and January. And here are the next steps. So really, that's pretty much the end of the staff report. Happy to go through any questions you had or any other comments you may have, but I'll stop there and open it up. Questions? Martha, I should ask Martha, anything you want to add on that? You got it. All right.
No words from Martha. Okay.
Yeah, I took this one tonight. So
Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn to you and ask you if you have any questions for Adam or Martha.
Adam, if our requirement is 700 whatever, and we turn in something that shows we can actually do 800 something, is the state going to come back and say, oh, good, you can do more, so that's your new number?
no, the numbers are established and they've been confirmed and finalized. The numbers won't change. You know, if we do change our housing site opportunity list, there may be some back and forth that we need to have, but I think it would all, as long as we meet the standards and for all the different income categories, I don't see that as being a problem or an issue.
And do you have to show, when you turn them in, do you have to show any evidence that people have actually gone ahead and say, we're going to do this development?
Yes, I guess it's not necessarily, there's a variety of ways, at least as it's written in state law, to present evidence, and it's not defined very, it's not, I wouldn't say it's black and white. We are looking at how others have addressed this in Southern California, for example. They've gone through the process recently. Some of these requirements are relatively new, so there is a learning curve even for HCD about what is acceptable and what's not. Certainly letters have traditionally been helpful, such as that we've received from Graham Street Realty. We have been in discussion with other property owners. Part of our workshop series was to actually bring property owners into the discussion so that you know, they could speak directly to those issues or their intentions. So it's a variety of things. Market demand also plays a role. Is it past development? So in this particular case, we can use the Tam Ridge redevelopment, which was redeveloping a commercial property right in the same location around here, as something that's happened recently. And that may help support the fact that housing can happen in these locations and on these sites. So there's a variety of things, but I think stated intention from property owners is always, I think it's a sort of a, I don't know if it's a gold standard, but it ranks up there as really helping your case, put it that way.
Is it a requirement?
I don't believe it's a requirement, no. And so in fact, some of these sites, we won't have that.
Yeah.
And we will just make the case otherwise, but we are expecting there may be comments about what makes you, you know, that's great, but what gives you the, you know, the belief that these will be redeveloped, and not only redeveloped, but redeveloped in the next, you know, within the next 8 years. So it is typically, we've been hearing there, we've been reviewing other, like I said, comments HCD has provided on other housing elements, and that has come up, those sorts of back and forth about the likelihood of these sites that have been chosen, especially if they're non-vacant. I mean, they're occupied with existing uses. So some of it can get into lease structures. I mean, that's written in state law and their guidance.
What structure? I didn't.
Like leases, like
Lease.
actually getting that information and
Mhm.
providing it. So it may be, it may vary on the site. It may vary. It's hard to say exactly what's going to be required. But I think we feel we have a good, many of the sites we can make a good case that they can.
That they would be developed.
That they can and would. And then, if we can make that case and it's accepted, what happens essentially after that. I mean.
And the last chart that you put up, what were the different colors of the, were they significant?
Yes, actually. Maybe I'm going to the, what's my clicker ability? So they related, essentially the map and that table go together. Here we
Oh,
go.
okay.
And the yellow are the least dense. In terms of all these sites would have to, you can see the column 2 in terms of the numbers shows the existing residential units per acre that's allowed today. And then the second column is those sites would actually have to be rezoned through a zoning ordinance amendment to allow additional units on those sites. And that's the yellow indicates the lowest, basically 20 to 25 units an acre. The orange is 30 to 35 units an acre. And then the reddish one is the Macy site, which would be the highest density at 40 units an acre. And so these sites 10 and 11, because they're similar in characteristics to, or have similar characteristics to obviously 400 and 500 Tamil Plaza and some of the other sites along Pfeiffer and Nellen, we would think it would be appropriate to rezone those to 35 units an acre. And again, just those were based on, through the workshops, we talked about what those would likely look like, or potentially the scale of those buildings, which we're looking at 2 to 3 stories above a podium, a parking or something like that. So ultimately 4 to 4.5 stories, 4 to 5 stories. It's likely what we might see with those 35 units an acre projects.
Thank you.
That's all. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Rizzo, do you have any questions for Adam and staff?
I do.
Yeah.
Not too many. We'll have a chance to a discussion at a later date, at a later time, right?
Yes.
Okay. In that C1 district for site number 1, could someone develop purely residential there and not have any commercial whatsoever in that zoning? Or do they have to have an element of?
Currently, there's no requirement for a mixed project, so it could be entirely residential.
So, okay. And so I understand that the parking doesn't get included in the floor area ratio either. So effectively, someone could come in there and build about double the structure that's there now. Like if it was parking underneath, I think it's a 7,000 square foot structure, which kind of aligns with the FAR currently. Okay, so that makes sense. And then I have a question. Does it, what's the difference between being included and rezoning and just keeping it the same? Meaning, like for the concerns of the people that are by site 1, just because it's included in this, it sounds like you could still build residential and you can still build the density almost to the requirement of what we're proposing. Is there any reason not to include them in the study?
Well, I wouldn't call it a study. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is set policy regarding what
Mhm.
the town wants to see at the sites that are included in these housing opportunity sites. So
Mhm.
not only can these sites be developed, but we are creating a policy document. So I think there is some, the sites that are included in this list, in the 11 sites that are out there on this map, it does set sort of a policy of advocating for housing at these locations.
Mhm.
There could still be some certainly mixed use components, and certainly some of these sites are appropriate for have some commercial on the ground
Mhm.
floor or what have you. But it does set I think a policy direction for those sites. If it's not included, it doesn't mean housing cannot be built at the site, but it's
Mhm.
sort of a normal application process. Obviously, we're not going to be, if you're going to ask, I think staff, we think there's certainly more advantages to being included than not included, because you can
Makes sense
actually
with that.
have some of the zoning standards and development standards that go along with that to address perhaps some of the issues and concerns and the site planning issues associated with that site. But certainly, I think there's also a policy
Mhm.
difference as well between leaving it in and leaving it out. One of the things I think you speak to as well, we probably won't want to carry too many more sites than we need, just because, and this is again a perverse, in my mind, a perverse incentive from this housing element process, because in 2030, when we go through this again, you get penalized essentially for not, if sites aren't developed over this next 8-year period. You have to go to a by right scheme for the sites that haven't been developed over the last planning period, which is another thing. So you kind of want some buffer, but maybe not a lot of buffer. But in this case, I think the other thing to consider, this is a vacancy. We know something's going to happen here in the next 8 years. So I do think
Mhm.
it's not going to sit vacant for that long of a time. I would not think. It's same with the theater site. So in any case, those are the main differences in my mind.
And then my second question, actually, I have another 2 questions. So my second question would be, there's probably going to be a study that correlates FAR with the unit count per acre, because even in the C1 right now, it doesn't, it's, but you almost can't get up to the amount of units that you need, and you can't almost get to 7 2-bedroom units at the current FAR. I'm focusing in on this lot because I know it a little bit better than the other ones. So I'd imagine you guys are going to be doing another study on how to come up with that, because the floor area ratio is really going to determine the bulk for all these neighborhoods, and what we're going to be reviewing in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And currently, I mean, it's I know the general plan, we do have a residential FAR in there that was done in 2016 with the MX1 district, but our R2 zoning district, for example, doesn't use FAR. It just uses essentially the units per acre metric, and then you have height and other ways of controlling the mass and scale. And that's one thought, certainly, is to decouple FAR from residential and really have the FAR apply to commercial and use the residential density. But I think we'd want to do that with studying what sort of massing and bulk controls we have in place to make sure that we do have some, achieve some of the form that we hope would be developed on those sites.
Okay, and then my last question is, it seems that you guys have done it looks like there's almost a loop that could almost take you to the ferry building and loop in all the transportation. Has there been talks with some sort of very frequent, like, tram or trolley that connects once you get all this density in here? Because I know that this will come up as well once we start developing. There'll be more cars on the road, and how do we get them off the road and encourage them to use public transportation? Has there been any talks about that, like something frequent enough that people would want to take it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. None that I know of for this specific area. I've often thought of the shopping center should have something like that. But I will say, we're in 240 Temple Vista Boulevard right now. If you haven't walked, I take the train down on the SMART train now more frequently because we're in this location. So a lot of our sites are right around where we're sitting today. It's an 18-minute walk, and the bike, they've just built a new bridge, for example, over Corte Madera Creek on the side of the highway interchange there. So there's a lot of improvements that are making bike and ped more convenient, more accessible. And so the northern part, these sites at the northern part of Corte Madera really are pretty accessible to both the ferry and the train. But certainly, one of the things that we're looking at is what sort of requirements to your point of aiding people from not having to drive from these housing development sites. Certainly the bike and ped network's good. There could be additional features as requirements for some of these properties that where who knows, there's bike share opportunities, such as I think the hotel development is going to have a bike share component and program as part of the hotel development. So people can use that and bring them back. These offsites are, near school sites, which is our biggest generator of traffic on local streets for the most part. But yeah, I think those are all things to continue to consider and try to improve. There are some improvements going on now, but to your specific point about the loop, no, I haven't heard that TAM or any sort of transportation agency is considering that at this time.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Couple of questions regarding 601 from myself. 601, is it within the quarter mile of a transportation hub that it doesn't need to have any parking associated with residents, or how does that play into it?
It's a good question. I don't believe it's within a quarter mile of the major transit stop is maybe which I believe that applies really to the ferry and the train station. And really only the very tip of Corte Madera, northern tip, I think, is within that radius.
So the highway bus stop doesn't?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that relinquishes. I don't think there's anything that precludes parking from being required. The ratios, the stuff changes seemingly every year in terms of the requirements, but we'd have to do a deeper dive on exactly what it may change on site by site, but it's I'm pretty sure we can still require minimum parking requirements. And what we would intend to do would be to use the objective design development standards and the parking ratios that we had in that document that was fairly adopted, and apply those to these multifamily.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So in talking about the allowable uses there, I'm getting a picture of the opportunity to put design guidelines around new zoning on the property, but there's already in existence a set of parameters that would apply to 601. And they're fairly liberal for commercial use. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're actually intended for commercial development, not necessarily
So
residential.
the heights that are allowable now are 30
feet.
30 feet. Yeah. And that would be the same regardless of rezoning. Unless we.
Well, yeah, if we did not rezone, there's a 30-foot height limit. There are some setback requirements, which make it frankly challenging to do much of anything on that property. But they're all designed really for commercial development. Similar to 645 Tamil Vista, the 3-unit apartment project, which we'll hear from, in a few, about a month. Anyways, yeah, it's that's about all you have, 30 feet. And any other standards that you want to?
I'll just add the setbacks are based on what the adjoining uses are. So the front setback in the C1 is 10 feet, but then if you're across the street from residential, it's 20 feet instead. And the same applies to the rear setback as well. So the setbacks are 20 feet on that site's challenging to fit a development and meet those setbacks.
Wow. So the parking lot is a parking lot.
Yes, or it would include variance requests as part of the development.
Okay. Just trying to evaluate these three options. With regard to the HCD review and the timeline that you presented, I'm just wondering what happens if HCD comes back with some comments that forces a change in the plan that has to be acted on fairly quickly then?
Yeah. Short answer to that one. Thanks for the reminder. No, it is a yes. It's and frankly, we're I think we're moving sort of out front. We're hoping we're in good shape. It's not like, I don't think it's like, and I don't think it's like they wait the full 90 days and then they'll just lay a document on you. There's hopefully, there's conversations that happen during that 90-day process where you sort of start with the big picture stuff and then you start to drill down. But we certainly do expect to receive comments of some nature in the plan, probably changing here or there, whether it's program, different sections of the draft.
Right. But they still expect it to be engaged come.
Yeah, there's still the statutory requirements of January 23. So
Hammer Falls.
yeah. And we're not anticipating the worst case scenario at this point, or just there's many different scenarios that could play out, but this is the most straightforward, linear, and the one that gives us the greatest chance of sort of wrapping it all up at one time and in compliance. So that's really what we're shooting for, the goal here.
It does not sound as if you've received any negative comment letters from any of the property owners.
No.
Right. That's great. Hope springs eternal. Right? Okay. Well, at this point, we can open this up for public comment. There's no, there are no attendees. So, but we can open it up, officially for public comment, and there's the opportunity to email us if anybody's listening or anybody wants to stand in, make a public comment. So we have 3 minutes.
Not as dumb as I look. Good evening, Diane Henderson. I'm here on behalf of Graham Street Real Estate. They are the owners of 100 Tamil Plaza and this building, 240 Tamil Vista. They only took ownership of these properties in mid-December, so They were late to the game when they heard about the housing element being underway. They were hoping to be a part of it and sent the letter to the town. And Adam has been very accommodating, and we concur with his analysis in the staff report. I think these are both great locations, and they are very anxious to build housing on them. So we appreciate your consideration in that regard. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Can't think of one offhand.
That's a good thing. Thank you. And aren't we glad that the Warriors aren't playing tonight?
Great. Thank you very much.
No emails, and we don't have any attendees at the moment.
Call somebody. Okay, well, given the thick commentary in the staff report, I'm surprised that there is not somebody waiting online or in the room to make a comment. So.
Yeah, we just, we did meet with Allison Jones and Melissa Dugan, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I think it was last Monday or Tuesday. And so we briefed them on sort of the direction we were going in the staff report. And we've sent them the staff report and made sure, and I think Melissa let me know that she was going to pass the staff report on to all of the other neighbors as well. Maybe it's a good sign, but it's also, I think there's the council meeting. We wanted to do this at two different meetings as well. So there's the council meeting next week as well that perhaps would be an opportunity.
Okay, well, then we'll officially close the public comment section of this item agenda and then bring it back for discussion amongst the three of us that are here. So, Mr. Rizzo, have you come to any conclusions?
Sorry, I'm muted. Excuse me. Conclusions. Well, all the, it seems like all the sites that were selected, other than the one that's kind of controversial right now, seem like great sites. I don't really have any comments on those, other than I truly believe that working some kind of transportation would benefit not only the people coming from the ferry and coming into work, alleviate some traffic, and people that might be carrying things that might not be able to get on a bike or want to carry it for 20 minutes. So hopefully in the future, when we look at the master plan with this, maybe that comes up. I know that people don't like change, but I do think that any use that's a commercial use, and especially a funeral parlor, is probably not the best use between two residential neighborhoods. So if we go back to site one, I do think rezoning that into something that kind of can be a transitionary housing development between, a main street and there's a residential neighborhood across the street, and then behind it. Definitely going to have to get creative a little bit with the parking, but if that was developed as a commercial site, it could be a Trader Joe's where you'd have 1 million cars and transitionary people throughout the neighborhood, which I think would probably be frowned upon even worse from the neighbors. And I think that, when staff comes up with how they're going to come up with the massing I think that Martha asked her, she was looking at, if we go to a form-based, in our odds booklet, she was looking at a T4 suburban neighborhood, small, which is actually favors the neighborhood a little bit with a setback on their street. But right now, I believe the funeral parlor does not have a setback on that street at all. So they'll actually benefit from a better setback in the back. I really don't think that going from 7 to 9 units is going to be a big deal with the current if we do wind up going with an FAR, it's going to have to be increased for anybody to put even more than 7 units. As I calculate it now, the funeral parlor is about 7,000 square feet. They're maxed out on the square footage they can build, even if it was all residential. But yeah, obviously you can build parking underneath that's not a part of that. So I think actually you have less control over the C1 zoning than you would if you let the town rezone this into something that can be properly masked for that site. So I mean, I know I'm spending a lot of time on that site, but I think all the other sites are properly zoned with the density that fits. Other than I think the transportation is something we'll look at in the future. So out of those 3 options, I'd like to go over them again after we hear from everybody else.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Margaret.
I guess I'm the everybody else.
Yeah.
First, I have to say, I think it's a gift to us that these 2 property owners, people have come forward and said, let us develop housing. That's actually, I think a bonus. I have concerns about that, the kind of Tamil Vista Plaza corridor and the traffic, I think. And I have always had a real problem with the on-off ramp that's over here at Lucky Drive. It's dangerous and it's poorly designed. And so I think if we start putting housing in there, I think that maybe the developers could pay for that to fix it up, but it needs work. That little piece, I guess it's number 1, the funeral, the home. Right now, it doesn't look very good. It's empty and it's kind of forgotten looking. And I think that something has to happen to it. And if some good design could be developed, that would make it a good transition, as Jim said, from sort of the busy street into the residential neighborhood. I think that would be a very good use for it. I used to take the bus all the time to the city right there. And I think that would be a good place for, smaller units of people who were commuters going back and forth into the city. I think that could be a very good use for that property. I have, as Jim said, I have no problem with the other things, but as I said, I definitely think if there are 2 property owners coming forward and saying we're interested in redeveloping our properties and we can put housing there and it alleviates some of the other sites, that's a gift. And I think we ought to go with it.
So when you see these 3 options that are in the staff report,
I think I looked at it before and I think I liked the middle, the second option, but I have to look at it again.
okay.
And if I can
Find it again now.
just from the perspective of the options, I mean, staff wanted to start drafting some options and thinking about them, but really we're trying to sort of recommend that these be considered after we hear from HCD at this. And so it's not really for it's up to the commission to see. I mean, happy, and I'm sure the neighbors would be happy to hear where the commission stands on this, but in terms of actually deciding, it'd be helpful to know if you're comfortable waiting to actually make a sort of a final decision on that until after we have the comments back from HCD and know where we stand with respect to all the sites. That sort of thing. So
Yeah, okay. So I think that as much as I'd like to see more lower income, I'm curious what the town would have to do to make that qualify. You said you had work to do.
yes, for the 10 unit option. So
Yeah.
if you did rezone it to 20 units an acre, that's the first step. But because it's less than 0.5 acres, and I brought this with me so I could actually, this is a guidance doc. The additional work that we would need to do. So I'm just reading from this. This is page 16 of the site inventory guidebook from HCD. So it basically talks about a parcel smaller than 1/2 acre is considered inadequate to accommodate housing affordable to lower income households unless the housing element demonstrates development of housing affordable to lower income households on these sites is realistic or feasible. While it may be possible to build a housing on a small parcel, the nature and conditions necessary to construct the units often render the provision of affordable housing infeasible. So we have to consider and address the impact of constraints associated with small lot development, demonstrate the feasibility of development of on this type of site. The analysis must include at least one of the following. So it talks about, are there past examples of affordable housing being developed on sites of this size? No, we don't have that. Evidence that the site is adequate to accommodate lower income housing. Could include developer interest, potential for lot consolidation, perhaps with an adjacent lot. Densities that allow sufficient capacity for a typical affordable housing project. Other information that can demonstrate to HCD the feasibility of the site for development. Another option is it's presumed to be realistic for development to accommodate lower income housing need if at the time of adoption of the housing element of development of if there's actually a plan in place or an application in place. And then it also must describe existing and proposed policies or incentives the jurisdiction will offer to facilitate development of small sites. So there, those are the types of things. He talks about examples of program incentives for lot consolidation, deferring fees specifically for consolidation, expediting permit processing, providing flexible development standards such as setback requirements, reduced parking and increased heights, committing resources for development of affordable housing on small sites, etc. So it's literally the threshold of point. So it falls just below the 0.5 acre threshold. If you have sites that are between 0.5 acres and 10 acres, you don't need to provide that information. It's assumed that those are the right size for lower households, as long as they meet the 20 units an acre. So it is a additional task. If we didn't consider them for lower income households and we just said, we don't want to go through that for this site, they could be 10 units, and we still wanted to increase the development capacity to 20 units an acre, we would just say, all right, well, those are going to be market rate HCD. We're counting these as market rate or above moderate housing for the purposes of the housing element, which again is a little bit different than reality. If someone actually was going to build a 10 unit project on that site, 2 of the units with our new inclusionary housing ordinance would be required to be deed restricted. And so this is where the plan and our requirements for HCD doesn't necessarily match up with the reality of what would actually get developed and how it would get developed on the site. But it's what we need to do in order to
Got it.
meet
Yeah.
compliance.
All right, thank you. That's clarifying what you have to go through. With regard to 100 and 240, I think that those are great added options. And whether or not they turn into reality is another story economically, and but you'd have to do a fair amount of legwork just to condition all of these properties in the rezoning, or you have to write some pretty specific site-specific stuff for all of these properties.
Yeah, I think yes, I mean, we're not necessarily, such as we do with zoning districts. When we do MX1, we did apply the same sort of rules for 7 properties along the corridor. We try not to, it's hard to get too site specific, but we do and tailor everything exactly to a particular site. I mean, we are intending to do some of that. We'll see how far down the road we get. Again, being too prescriptive may at some point becomes a barrier and too challenging for developer. But we do have the odds now, the objective design development standards, to help sort of inform how we might be able to use those for each of the sites.
So all right. Does HCD actually look for encouraging aspects of the zoning to invite development? No, they can't really, right?
You mean, I think they definitely are looking at policies and programs, which is a different part of the housing element. So it's not specific to the sites. I think they look at, if you're rezoning is definitely is incentive, right? I mean, that's a big move that the town is going to take to actually facilitate the housing development. So but they'll also look at programs and policies and what are you doing in addition to help facilitate potential housing development. And so that's where we talk about, the inclusionary policy that we just adopted. Some of the the objective design development standards were part of a streamlining component, in the sense that at least there's some standards out there that a developer could look to and say, oh, if I do something like this, are we going to be in good shape? It's a little softer. So a lot of the policies and programs, but certainly they look to other types of activities that the town intends to pursue around facilitating housing, partnering, relationship building, those sorts of things can be woven in. And then certainly any specific code incentives, that's sort of more at the option of there isn't anything specific that they're looking for, other than just, certainly allowing state laws requirements to and complying with those that are already out there.
Thing I can think to add is there is a constraints analysis that needs to be done. And you need to demonstrate that you're not creating development standards that would be constrained to development. So for instance, a really high parking requirement could be seen as a constraint.
And there's a traffic study that will be done as part of the EIR. Yeah. And as I recall, when there were traffic studies done along Tamla Vista that determined that residential development was lower than semi-commercial or commercial use. And they did some traffic studies in and out of 100 and 400 to contribute to an analysis of the.
Yeah, well, yeah, so we've started, I mean, there's sort of you take the existing condition, which has office and retail and other sorts of uses, and it's sort of a net analysis. So then if that's redeveloped with residential, and what we're finding, we've already started the process of sort of setting up the baseline, and well, setting up the framework for the analysis. And so it is it is obviously significantly more residential units along some of these areas, but less commercial uses. And so I think overall, it's fair to say there is going to be expected to be more vehicles, but different time periods than you typically would see during daytime versus nighttime, different types of trips. And it's important to know, and I think we discussed this during the last big or larger traffic analysis, but the standard from there's a couple different things. From a environmental analysis standpoint, standard is actually assessing how many vehicle miles traveled those residents will take versus a retail or an office trip or something like that. That said, we are also doing sort of as a sidebar, because we know, traditionally we've done more intersection level analysis. How long are you going to be stuck at a light or at an intersection as a result of the increased traffic? So we're doing that. That's sort of a separate informational document just to start to look at that level of analysis. We know that's going to be part of what I think our community wants to see, and what our decision makers also are sort of interested in looking at, although it's not directly tied to any sort of legal requirement that we analyze traffic in that way. So the vehicle miles traveled, what you do find is that that's trying to get at, are you putting your new units, housing units, near public transit? To Commissioner Rizzo's point, are you trying to have programs that help people get out of their cars and use, whether it's bike and ped or public transit or the best available transit that's out there? So, and really you're trying to get below a certain baseline threshold that's sort of the median or mean in the community today. So that's what we'll be looking at, those two ways of looking at the traffic analysis. And yeah, that will come out later when we release the draft supplemental environmental impact report.
Okay. Well, at least I'm clear that I'm all for the added sites, and that to your point about 601, yeah, it should be left in, I think, and added as necessary, but I don't want to presuppose anything, but I think that letting it get rezoned would be beneficial, such that you could work with the neighbors and come up with something that would be more attractive. I think it would be to their benefit, but hope that doesn't get me any hot water with future decision making. So anyway, right. Okay. Mr. Rizzo, do you have any further thoughts?
No, not really. I just, I think that the biggest concerns that I might pose listening to the neighbors would just be, how we come up with the massing if we do use a like one of our odds toolkits.
All for the
The words are not coming to me right now. Sorry, but what I'm trying to say is I think we just need to be mindful of the massing if we start basing some of the new zoning on some of our new codes that we're putting in place. Because currently I don't even think that what I see they can develop in today's code isn't really going to be a massive building. It's about the same size as what they have right now. So I would totally, if I'm going to just focus in on what we're talking about today, I think that everything should be left in for now. And then when we get to these specific sites that we can start addressing them in context with the neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. And for you, Margaret,
So something just occurred to me that, isn't that a flood zone there? Isn't,
Yeah, pretty
Yes.
much all of our sites are in actually the flood
Yeah,
zone.
no, sorry, Margaret, if I may, I just, that's why I was bringing up actually commercial or parking, because anything built there is going to need to be built over parking if it's residential. Just because it's going to have to be 4 or 5 feet above floodplain.
okay. Just occurred to me, I always see signs that say Lucky Drive flooded.
Talking to Caltrans about that.
No, I agree with, I think the consensus here is to leave everything in, and then, if we have more sites approved or go through the approval process, we still have the sort of mountain to climb of getting people to do the development and get it done, timely and done well. So I think having more sites, as long as the number doesn't go up, is a good thing.
okay. All right, so you've heard that. We're all in,
I appreciate it. Thanks for your,
and you've got this day lit. So I
Yeah.
think you're,
all the members.
oh, but it'll be called up on YouTube. You just wait.
Well, hopefully, I mean, that's how it's going these days. So we certainly will we'll add the video to our housing element website. We're going to continue to promote that ad nauseum, and obviously we have another meeting next week before we want to, before any draft comes out. So
It says here, PC workshops, August 9th.
yeah, so where am I? So these are sort of placeholders, but we do ideally, let's say I have the July 8th question mark. If we can get it out by July 8th, it would be nice to come back at the end of the 30-day public comment period and sort of just review the comments with the Planning Commission and what we've heard. And then, we likely won't have time to actually redraft the document, but we do want to check in, and the thought is checking in, and then certainly checking in with the town council at August 16th before we send anything to HCD. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're coming back to PC&T and town council with, the need to just get support to, the direction to send, it's ready to go and send this off and have start the 90-day review period. So.
How many pages is this document?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
It's over 100, but then there's a couple more pages of appendices as well.
More than
Yeah.
a couple more
Yeah.
pages. A couple hundred more pages of appendices. I think the good thing is one of the biggest parts of the document is going to be compiling all the outreach efforts and all the comments and all that information that we're accumulating over the many different workshops and meetings and so that, or that should be an impressive appendix, but and when there's more to go on that, so that will be a big piece of the document. And then the rest of it is, you'll see a lot of what you haven't seen thus far is the policies and programs chapter, which get into, I think we had a slide up before at one of our workshops, but it's really what you see in the general plan, those sorts of things. Here's the policy, here's what we're trying to do and how here's the implementation program that we're committing to over the next 8 years as part of the housing element. So that's going to be a chapter when we release the draft, not a lot of folks have really seen before. The sites I think we'll have covered pretty thoroughly, but the policies and programs will be some new materials and information.
Okay. Do you feel sufficiently that we can close this?
Absolutely. No, appreciate it. Thank you as always.
Okay. Great. All right. So then it's been so long since we've had another meeting, two, but we're supposed to go into commissioner reports at this point in time. So I haven't been able to keep tabs on who's doing a report for us right now or not. Margaret, do you have any report to
Yep.
make?
Well, I went to the May 17th town council meeting.
Great. All right, let us hear. Look, you got notes.
I have notes, yes. There were presentations, well, in the form of proclamations that May, which is gone now, but May was proclaimed by the town of Corte Madera to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. May is also Jewish American Heritage Month. And also May is Older Americans Month. And Corte Madera had proclamations for each of those. And to tell you the truth, I'm kind of proud of that because I work for the county and the county didn't have proclamations. Corte Madera remembers these things. And I think that's pretty darn good. Then there was a budget overview. It wasn't the specifics of the budget. It was sort of the preliminary information about the budget overview. And it is kind of hard to follow if you don't have a lot of experience with the budget parts, but there were some pieces that I picked up, which I thought were pretty significant. And one of the things that Todd mentioned, although was, and I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but a money-saving effort was made to move out of positions being contracted out to other contractors and hiring full-time positions, full-time equivalent positions in the town, which led to, and some of the positions actually are shared with other towns also. I think it's Lorena shares her position with Fairfax. Is that right? Do you know? Anyway, but it's a money saver when you don't have to contract out, and it also provides much better in-house service. And that actually I found to be a very wonderful idea and a tremendous improvement. Let's see, what else? Then there were the appointments of different members to boards and committees, including myself. Good for me. And then there talked about, which we've already gone through on the Planning Commission, the inclusionary housing policies. And we've already pretty much gone through that and done the recommendations to the town council. And then, oh no, it was Lorena who talked about afterwards the revised mission statement and the town values. And she had attended classes and classes with other people in the county from different towns to just add to the mission and value statements, expanding language about diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And that's the report.
That's a great report. Thank you. I do say so. Mr. Rizzo, do you have any reports to make?
I do not.
Okay. My last meeting was to attend was April 5th. That's getting to be pretty stale. I think we've exceeded the time limit. So put that one to bed. So planning director, you have anything?
I'll be
to-
brief. Can we say, so one, I just wanted to say, we are expecting a very celebratory July 4th parade. We got an initial report from Julie Kritzberger that there's a lot of excitement and a lot of interest in the floats and the participation in the parade. And so we're going to be out there. Martha and I will be out there as well, talking housing right next to the beer line. That's where we were told is the best place to catch people, bring them down and just make sure they're not drinking too heavily. But no, we're excited about continuing to do some housing element outreach in July. And other than that, I'm sure there's something else that I could report, but it's escaping me at the moment. So I don't know. I'll ask staff here if they have any other reports to give at the moment. No. Tracy, no, just shaking your hand. All right.
Shaking heads.
Oh, I will say yes. Well, I just thought of one. We, to Margaret's point, a new commissioner has been appointed to the Planning Commission. Dan Kinney is his name. I will be meeting him in person for the first time next week. And then obviously there's a lot of introductory materials he's reading up on, but we're very excited to have him join the commission. And I think the first meeting, we're sort of don't have a lot of items in front of the Planning Commission that we're expecting for the next couple of meetings. So it may just actually be the second meeting in July where we get a full commission. Hopefully it's not too full, but we'll get a lot of items then. So but that's all I have to report.
From West Corte Madera, I can report that the town hall is starting to be worked on.
Oh,
Excellent.
what are they
And
doing?
they're trying to tear the guts out. They're doing a selective demo process, I can tell.
Yes.
So, and looks to me like recycling is an important feature of that demo. So I thought maybe they'd just bring in a giant claw and tear it down in a day.
We don't know what we have. There's stuff in there that we probably don't want going outside of the building envelope there. But yeah, no, I'm glad that's exciting news for sure. And we don't get to go down there and see it ourselves anymore. So I appreciate the report. You can let us know what's going on.
Pictures.
Yeah, they have negative air machines running, so they might be working on those toxic elements coming out of there. So,
Good.
all right. With that said, that's sort of a report on the future. You don't have anything for us to do. Beginning of
No, at
July.
this time, we don't have an item for the next meeting.
And Mr. Boyle asked if we were going to, if we would report up our vacation plans.
Oh, that's right. And that would be helpful. You can get back to us if you have any planned vacations this summer. Phil's trying to coordinate his vacation over there with yours, I think. But It also, I should also report, and I would make an announcement. We did have a short-term rental workshop last week as well. And so we will be putting out some more information about that. We're going to get a webpage up. And so that's certain, and try to get additional interest in individuals to opine on the various different things we had people at the workshop opine on. So there'll be sort of like a feedback form or a survey that we'll be getting out to try to get out to more people than attended that meeting.
I did zoom in on
Yes.
that one.
Yeah.
But it was kind of disappointing because there were only 16
Yep.
people
Yep.
on the Zoom. And I thought,
Yeah.
that was
Well,
not,
we'll continue. And I think for example, that's going to be at our housing and element table. We'll have some
Okay.
information there as well. So we'll do multiple things there. Anyways.
Adam, have you guys identified some of the dates that the planning commission won't be? Is there a town, is the town looking at a few dates that you guys don't want to have a planning commission for your vacations? So we might, I don't have anything planned right now, but I would definitely plan around other people's.
We'll get back to you. Yeah. I think the next meeting is one where a couple of us are intending to be out. And so there happens to be nothing on the agenda for that meeting in any case, but we'll let you know and what our schedules are, or the meetings that we don't have agenda items. At least we can look a little bit out, we get about a month out. We try to go at least 3 meetings out to sort of start to anticipate when some of the items will be ready for commission meetings. And so right now it's looking like the next 2 meetings may not have items. Am I right on that? Okay. And so I think we're looking at the next one for sure will be the second meeting in July.
Mhm.
Okay, and then August sort of evaporates as well.
No, August, certainly there'll be housing element items.
Even for the design review discussion in August.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So we're looking at a workshop regarding changes to the design review sections of the municipal code, which is one of the items on our work plan. So that's an important one. I'm not sure which date yet. And there'll likely be some sort of typical design review or something in August, I would imagine. So I don't know yet. But we'll continue to try to go about 3 meetings out and just let you know if that's helpful. Try to plan it
Okay.
that way through the summer.
and when was this, the one you mentioned earlier? Or there were letters in the packet?
Right, that was originally scheduled for tonight, but was postponed and is now scheduled for the second meeting in July.
Oh,
And tentatively scheduled.
Yeah, that will have 645 Tim Pius also at the second meeting in July. Just the 3-unit apartment building.
Okay. Should we can't ask questions about that thing right now? No, right? All right. Then I won't. All right. So that said, we have nothing else to discuss. Oh, we have meeting minutes of April 26, 2022. But Mr. Rizzo was not in attendance. So in order to approve these meeting minutes, we need Dr. Bundy here.
I think we'll punt on them, it looks like.
Okay. All right. Then therefore, this meeting is adjourned.